Yes, Kathleen and I are part of the Metropolitan Family Services Senior Service Program. And between the two of us, I guess we actually now have maybe decades of experience in doing counseling for both older adults, but also for family caregivers. And tonight we've been able to have some panelists come to talk about the experience of being in our groups. But I wanted to maybe give a little brief overview of Metropolitan Family Services agency first. We're a not-for-profit agency that has roots that go all the way back to the Chicago fire. In the DuPage area, Family Services started, I think, during the 1930s and early 1940s, during World War II, provided a lot of service. And today we provide a lot of behavioral health services from young children all the way up into serving people in their 90s. And in addition to our behavioral health services, we serve very young kids through our Head Start program, Early Head Start. And we also have family shelter services to address domestic violence, and a number of other programs that are included in Metropolitan Family Services. So I encourage you to look up our website, or if you have any further questions about our services at the end, we can maybe address those as well. But today we're going to talk about mental health awareness, but in the context also of how groups might help with mental health. And I think we're all beginning to realize that having mental health is not something maybe to just start thinking about at the time of crisis or the time of some traumatic event, but that's something that we can build and work on, just like we build and work on our physical health. And having mental health strategies, coping skills can help us when that crisis might occur. And in terms of who's impacted by mental health conditions, it's a large percentage of the population will experience some kind of mental health condition at some point in their life. Alternatively, you may have symptoms of a mental health condition, but not meet the criteria for a full diagnosis of a condition. So you might experience some anxiety or other symptoms that don't rise to the level of actually being a diagnosable condition. But it doesn't mean that you might not need help or support in dealing with that. So there's some facts on this sheet about different kinds of criteria for diagnosing a mental health condition, and then how long you might experience that before you could be diagnosed with that condition. So for example, on this sheet, it says that if you experience anxiety, it's really not diagnosable until you've experienced it for 6 months. However, if you look at experiencing of depression, it might be a 2-week interval where you're feeling that symptom every day for 2 weeks. I'm going to have you go to the second page, Courtney, of this flyer. So it says 21% of all adults in the US live with some type of mental health condition. So all of us know someone who probably has some type of mental health condition that they're coping with. And that in our lifetime, the incident rate will be 46%. So it definitely is something to take into consideration and to work toward finding different ways to cope. And a good way to cope with getting support for the stressors that we have in our life might be with a group. And so we've got attendees from various groups today who are going to talk about their experience with the groups. I just also wanted to say something about caregivers and the incidence of depression. Um, so many caregivers experience a clinical depression, and some studies say that it's about 20% of caregivers have clinical depression, and other studies even say it might be as many as 40 to 70% experiencing a clinical depression. And some of that may depend on the circumstances of your caregiving. If you're caregiving for someone who needs 24/7 care and you have very few breaks from caregiving, that may lead to a higher rate of depression. Or if you're caregiving for someone who has dementia or someone who also is experiencing depression themselves, it can lead to a greater likelihood that you might be at risk for depression. So joining a caregiver support group and being able to talk to peers might be one way to cope. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen to introduce our attendees.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Yes, I want to introduce our four panelists and thank them very much for their generosity of time tonight. We have Pat Carlson, we have Dorothy Fitzgerald, thank you, Barb Osborne, and Barb Baker. When I was preparing for tonight, I decided to look up the definition of a support group. I thought that might be one way to start before we got into our questions. And it's a group of people meeting to share information, experiences, problems, and solutions. And Metro has three support groups in our senior program. We have our caregiver support group that's been going for at least 20 years. Kelly and I were talking earlier and realized that it had been that amount of time. Our grandparents raising grandchildren program, and our newest group, and it's not that new, it started in 2013, is our life transition group. And that came about when Kelly and I recognized that a lot of the people that we were serving and providing support and counseling were very isolated and lonely. We, because of confidentiality, we certainly couldn't introduce people, but we could provide a format for people to come to visit and come together. And so we created this pre-COVID, certainly, and we had in-person meetings. And they would come to one of our conference rooms twice a month and engage. And it was social. It was not a therapeutic support group. It was really a social group, and the point was to try and make friendships, and they did, and it was very successful. And over time, we had turnover, but we've expanded and now have two life transition groups going at Metro. But of course, with COVID, all of these groups had to move to Zoom, and I think rather successfully. We are going to try and go back in person when the numbers permit. But for now, I think it's allowed a lot more people to participate. And so, again, I believe in the support groups. I facilitate, as you know, that are here today, a number of them, as does Kelly. So we feel that they're very beneficial and certainly a great way to provide that support for people that are isolated and struggle with issues that go along with either the caregiving, the grandparents raising grandchildren, or the isolation that comes with that have brought people to the life transition group. I have questions for our panelists tonight, and I'm going to start. I'll start with Dorothy. The question I have, and then after, whoever would like to answer as well, I'll allow you to decide. The first question I have, Dorothy, is what brought you to the group? And you can identify which group you're a part of.
Okay, I was with the caregiver support group, and I was caring for my 91-year-old mother who was living with me. And I was struggling with her, challenging times with her, and it got me into a little bit of depression. And I have siblings, but I felt very alone. So that's why I heard about the group and I joined, and it helped me a lot.
Thank you. Barb Baker, would you care to tell us what brought you to the group?
Well, actually, I participate in two groups. The life transition group was my first exposure to the group support setting, and the social worker that was working with my husband invited me, and she said, I think you would enjoy this group of ladies. And I think she sensed the isolation that I was feeling with being a caregiver for my husband, which led me to the caregiver support group when that and it actually started just pre-COVID, when there was, I forget the name of the program, it escapes me right now, but we went through a book and had a process.
Stress Busters.
Stress Busters. But the thing that comes to mind for me with both groups is that we just laughed so much. We really, and it's not laughing at anybody or anything, it's just kind of like we're all in this together, so let's pull our boots up and move on. So that to me is the part that's been the most helpful. Yes, they have experience and they have solutions that maybe will help me, but the laughter is just the genuine caring piece.
Thank you. Thank you, Barb. Barb Osborne. What brought you
Yes,
to the group?
it was just an accidental, wonderful thing that happened for me. I had actually contacted Metropolitan for support for my granddaughter, who I had recently become the guardian for, and I believe she was put on a short waiting list. And in the interim, I started meeting with an individual counselor. And she mentioned, did you know we have a grandparents support group? And no, I did not at the time. So it was wonderful to actually make connection with that group. And it's made all the difference in the world for me the last 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Pat?
Well, I initially I found found out about the group from a flyer that I read, and I was overwhelmed taking care of my mom, who was in her 90s, and I was determined to get to the group. And I remember the first time I went on my, I live pretty close to the facility, so I went on my bike and I had a bike accident, and I still went anyway. And Kathleen was so nice. She was so concerned. She was, looking for a Band-Aid or something. She was just it's so sweet, so caring. So it was great being part of that caregivers group, because I was feeling very depressed at not knowing what I was doing with taking care of my mom. And it was the first time I had this whole responsibility by myself. And it, it was, it, it was more than I could absorb. And I was getting very depressed. And the idea about being able to talk about it was great. Um, I felt supported by everybody in the group, and I heard some ideas about how to handle certain situations that I would not have thought of on my own. And it was just wonderful. When we could meet in person, it was really everybody became such really good friends. We couldn't wait for, for the people to arrive to find out how they were doing, because everybody being in the same boat was so caring. So it was just a wonderful experience. And then um, my mom passed away, and I got to be in the transitions group, which has been absolutely a lifeline because because after my mom died, it was I fell into quite a bit of depression, and I was lucky. I had Kelly who also called me, and that was she was amazing, just amazing. And I look back and I think to myself, how in the world, how in the world did that poor lady ever put up with all my feelings and crying and carrying on and anger? And I just think, oh my, I've been so blessed and so lucky. So I think I'm just really honored to be here tonight to talk about it because I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you, Pat. Thank you very much.
Yes,
And
thank
you
you, Pat.
answered a little bit about how you benefited from it. So I'll go back to Dorothy, but I thank you very much. Dorothy, the question I have, the second one is, how have you benefited from the group? If you could expand on that a little.
I felt like I can move on and I felt stronger dealing with things with my mom. And like Pat said, hearing that other people going through the same situation you're going through and giving you ideas of how to get through the challenging times being a caregiver, um, gave me strength and gave me hope, really more than anything. I felt very almost like every time I'd come to a meeting, I'd be so tense with things that were going on in the house with my mom. And then after the meeting, I felt like my shoulders just went down and I was relaxed because I had ideas from other people. And I felt like I can handle the challenges a little easier than I did in the past, speaking in or being in the group that I was in. So
Thank you. Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
I appreciate that. All right, Barb Osborne, could you say how have you benefited from the group?
Sure. I've benefited primarily in just the connectedness, I would say, feeling connected to the group. I didn't have any friends or family that was experiencing being a grandparent, raising a grandchild. And, they couldn't even imagine how I could take on something like that. So once I became a part of the group, it was just an immediate connectedness. And I didn't have to explain anything. I didn't have to, they could look at my face and tell what I was feeling because I could look at their face and tell what, they were going through. I just felt at home. And there was also a sense of sameness, if that makes sense. But, that we were all going through the same thing we were different points in our journey, but we all knew the challenges and the joys also, that were involved in being a grandparent, raising a grandchild. But I just felt like I had come home somehow. These are my people.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. That's a beautiful way of putting it. You come home and they're your people. Thank you. I think we've lost Barb Baker for a minute. Hopefully she'll be able to come back on. Might be some technology, but I think one of the things I could answer, what she said earlier, the group, you could laugh, and I think that's important. Laughter is so therapeutic, and we often talk about it in our groups of how people, I'll say, stop the news, go watch Golden Girls, bring humor into your life, and I think so I'll be speaking for her. There is a certain amount of laughter that comes to the groups, and you bring it. You have to laugh at yourself, laugh at the situation.
Well, and topics you might not expect to be of great interest. Our last caregiver group, we probably spent 10 minutes on catheters. And, there's not many places you might have a 10-minute conversation on catheters. So,
yes. And some of the products. Yes, exactly. And it's a safe space. And, you put it out there and absolutely people understand. So it is kind of a unique, depending on which group you're in. My next question is, would you say the group experience has helped reduce stigma associated with getting help and support? And how so? So I'll go back to you, Dorothy.
It, I feel like I've always looked for a group. So that's hard for me to say. I felt like you were saying, I felt like when I was in the group, I felt very safe sharing my experience because I knew everyone else had a similar experience than I did. So it's a hard question for me because I've always looked for a group and I always felt that after I found one, it was a really good fit, and it was it was good to be comfortable in sharing everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's all right.
Thank you. Well, no, it's certainly, I didn't talk about the rules of the road
Yeah.
when we talked about that, but I used to say that when we would meet as caregivers. It was like that commercial for Las Vegas, what happens here stays here. And
Yes.
people understood that. They respected confidentiality because there were some very personal, intimate things that were put out on the table, and some, with a new attendee sometimes, but people just did understand and respect. So I appreciate you talking about that. Glad you're back, Barb. I answered for you on question number 2, how have you benefited? And I said that on your behalf, humor was a big piece of it when you talked about laughing. But I'm going to ask you my next question for you, Barb, is would you say the group experience has helped reduce the stigma associated with getting help and support? Oh, you're muted, so you have to unmute. That's okay. There you go.
Absolutely. I'm a strong believer in therapy, so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask. But, I think there's many ways that we can treat our mental health, and this has certainly been one of the most helpful for me. So, yes, the biggest piece is we turn and look at each other sometimes, even on Zoom, and say, well, I'm not the only one that happens to, or that has to deal with that, or that feels that way. And just knowing that you've got some company in how you feel or what you're dealing with makes it a little easier, because it is a very isolating experience. I'm a pretty social person, and it's impacted me in the caregiver role to be isolated, and that's a dangerous thing. So yes, I'm an absolute cheerleader for the group process. I don't think you can make a mistake. Some people say, well, I'm afraid to talk because what if I say something that's wrong? Well, there's nothing that's wrong. Nothing you can say is wrong. It's what you think and what you feel, and it's right. So yes, and the laughter, humor part is important, as I brought up and Jacqueline said too. So
Thank you.
it's a good thing.
Thanks. Barb Osborne, the same question. Would you say the group experience has helped reduce stigma associated with getting help and support?
It's interesting. I didn't experience any stigma in getting help. I think my problem was that I just never asked for help. And I was always so busy getting help for other people or seeking help for other people. So I was really surprised when the person at MFS recommended a group for me, and I'm like, what, why would I need a group? So I don't know if I was in denial or I was just simply not accustomed to asking for help for myself. So, but there was no stigma, and there certainly isn't one since I've been a part of the group either.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Pat, for you, the same question. Would you say the group experience has helped reduce the stigma associated with getting help and support?
You know, I I'm sure it did help, but I too didn't have any stigma or have any feeling of embarrassment about reaching out for help. And I think it might, it could have been because I had already been experienced a lot of help through NAMI with, I know we're not here to talk about NAMI, but my husband was mentally ill, and that is kind of the topic that we're dealing with tonight. And so I was fortunate to go to a support group for families of clients. So so that was so wonderful. And then when I found this, it was like, wow, like how did I get help in both of my problems? And I just would feel really lucky. So there's just never any stigma.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And no, and I appreciate you mentioning NAMI. I think that's something that Kelly and I were going to talk about at one point later on, and it's a wonderful resource as well. So no, a very appropriate thing to mention tonight. Thank you. So I'll go back to you, Dorothy. So what do you think might get in the way of people asking for help?
Pride, their pride, and thinking they can do it, thinking that, hey, I went into it myself, having my mom move in with me, and my family did tell me, are you sure? A lot of people came to me and said, are you sure you could do this? Sure, I can do this. I can do this. Until you're in that situation and experience the different things that you are shocked that can go wrong, or the challenging times, it's you realize it helps to have other people to talk to that are going through the same situation you're going through. It gets you through that, and it keeps you sane. So I say, people, put your pride aside, and if you're having such a challenging time, reach out, because it does help tremendously.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Barb Baker, would you like to speak to that? What might get in the way of asking for help? Unmute. Sorry.
Thank you. Pat said it very well. I don't have too much to add. I'm a go-getter. I'm a type A. I'm going to do this. Why would I not be able to put the world on my shoulders and carry it uphill in the mud? Pride is the answer. Yes. We all think we can be everything to everybody, and we can't. And before we, I am woman, hear me roar. I'm a child of the 70s, where women were going through that glass ceiling, and we're going to raise our kids and go to work and make homemade jams and jellies. I mean, we could do it all. So I'm a nurse. I was a nurse for 45 years. So I should be able to take care of my husband. Nobody knows him like I do. Nobody knows how to take care of people the way I do. And it's very humbling to have to say, okay, I can't do it all, see it all. And part of it that was helpful with this group, everybody said, you can't do that all. You got to get some support and some help somewhere. So yeah. I'll just piggyback on Pat. Great.
All right. Thank you. Our Barb Osborne.
Yeah.
What do you think might get in the way of people asking for help?
Yeah, I think in my case, life got in the way. I just had so many different things going on. I had so many plates in the air. I had a really demanding career. And I worked in an industry where my profession was project management. So, you're trained to solve problems. You're trained to get things done. You're not trained to get help for yourself. You're responsible for everybody on the team. So my problem was just accepting that, I am a member of this team, and that even me, I need help and replenishment so that I can be a better caregiver, and so I can be a better team leader, whatever. But it really was, expectations, my expectations and expectations of others, that, you're a giver, you're not a receiver kind of expectation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Pat, back to you. Well, what do you think might get in the way of asking for help?
You know, I don't have anything to add. I think everybody, what they said was really good. I think I think that way back when, initially when my husband was ill, there was a lot of embarrassment about trying to get help for him and for me, and just going to a therapist's office was embarrassing. I was hoping no one would see me going in there, and it was just like admitting that that there's something wrong with you. And I guess probably I didn't want to admit that, but I didn't even want to be a part of that. But I'm glad, I'm glad we did get the help. So it was the right thing to do.
Thank you. Yeah, who knew, groups could be so much fun, in the journey.
They are fun.
So, yeah.
I wanted to add that, I invited someone to a caregiver support group, and the person was really confused because they hadn't really recognized that they were a caregiver. They were unable yet to kind of identify that their role was not just only of a son or a daughter, but it had transitioned to something else. So sometimes it's even recognizing that you are in the role of a caregiver.
Mhm.
Exactly. Thank you. Back to you, Dorothy. How would you go about encouraging others to reach out for help?
Oh boy. I would tell them that they're not alone, that there's other people out there going through what they're experiencing, and that, like we all talked about in all our groups, is self-care. It's so important to take care of yourself first before you care for someone else, because you really need to be a strong person to be a good caregiver. That's about it. That's what the self-care is really the biggest thing I would tell somebody.
Yeah.
I have to share this really quick. I was at a restaurant and a waitress was telling us how she was caring for her 90-something-year-old father and her husband who had Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. And I got out my phone. I took Metropolitan Family Services. I wrote it on a piece of paper and the phone number, and I handed it to her. And I said, listen, these people are wonderful. I said, you really need to take care of yourself if you're caring for two people like that, and get some help to go through those challenges in your life. She was very appreciative.
Well, thank you. Thank you
welcome.
for being so generous and helping. Barb Baker, how would you encourage others to reach out for help? And
sharing my own positive experience, I think, is the best way, without getting into specifics or details, but just say, hey, I'm in awe of a white person telling complete strangers that kind of thing about her life. I mean, that's how consumed she was, though, with what she was doing. And so fortunately you were able to give her a great resource to use. But that's the other, maybe I'm off topic here. I think people don't know where to go sometimes for help. So the more we can get the word out, the better off we'll all be.
Agree.
Yeah, I
For
agree.
sure.
Thank you. The word of mouth. We're not for profits, so we don't have a budget of, where we can publicize. That's why we're very grateful to the Wheaton Library tonight that's allowing us to do this and to get the word out. So your turn, Barb Osborne. How would you encourage others to reach out?
Yeah, I think to kind of piggyback off what Dorothy was saying, the same thing. If you don't take care of you, you can't take care of others. And I think realizing that if something happened to me, um, everything else would fall apart. And so even in the beginning, even when I couldn't do it for myself, I said, I've got to do this because I've got all these people depending on me. Um, and it's just become second habit now, but initially I just didn't think like that, self-care. But so I tell friends now and family now, don't do like I did, save yourself. Get help up front. Don't wait until you have to get help. you know uh, so I just learned the hard way. You got to take care of you first.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And thank you. And through your experience in trying to help people not go down that road themselves,
Right, right.
because it's enough work as it is. So thank
Hmm.
you. All
Hmm.
right, Pat, for you, how would you encourage others to reach out for help?
Would have to say, along with everyone else, just to share my experience and just listen for when there's an opportunity, and they may not, be interested, or they may not want to go for it. But I feel like even if I talk a little bit about it and give a referral to Metropolitan, that it'll plant a seed, and possibly as they go home and they think things are okay, they're really not that bad, and then they get worse, they'll maybe think about that. Even though, I've had experience where I've suggested different things to people and they right away said, no, I'm not interested. But I'm just hoping that, that down the line, maybe they'll get some help.
Because sometimes we're not always ready for
Yeah,
the information and the resource. I
exactly.
remember myself as when I was caring for my mom years ago, and I would get information, but very often it wasn't at the right time and place. And after she was gone, and I was looking at all these notes and reflecting, and oh, that was too soon or that was too late. But I think again, if you have the opportunity, as you said, it presents itself. You share the information, and help people, like you're all doing here tonight for us. So I thank you. Courtney, I'll ask, do you have any questions through the chat at this point?
You just had one about where you are located, and so I shared your Wheaton address on Willow Avenue
Right.
from the website.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely.
All they have to do is, and that will be at the end, we'll have our resources of where we're located, and our groups right now are all only on Zoom, but people have to do is call, and either Kelly or myself will call them back and register them for a Zoom. What happens is we take down the information, and then they're put on a contact list. The information, the link goes out usually the day before the meeting, and then there's always a follow-up reminder call. Again, sometimes, if you're caregivers, your busy lives, you can't go to every meeting. That's all right. We understand that. And that's why we have numerous caregiver groups that you can come into. We're happy to see you, as participants tonight have said that. Everybody that's there is very understanding and generous and welcome of their knowledge and their time and understanding. So I think sometimes people feel if they have, this commitment. We understand that you have a lot on your plate, and we're there to support you. So I just wanted to put that out there about the support groups. Kelly?
Yes, every one of them is what we would call a drop-in group, meaning
Yes.
that you can come as your time allows. And for both the grandparent group and the caregiver group, there's a mixture of an evening meeting and a daytime meeting per month. And then the life transition groups are in the daytime, but one is in the morning and one is in the afternoon on different days. So yeah, we're trying to, make it easier for people. And the life transition group really also addresses all kinds of transitions. It might be someone who's new to retirement, and I should mention that right now, at least, our life transition groups are women's group. They're both women's groups.
Yes.
It allows also kind of a certain freedom to bring all kinds of topics to the group for the women who participate. We've done some men's group in the past that have been more time limited, but we don't have, we're recruiting for new employees, and hopefully maybe we'll have a male therapist join our team at some point, and that would be a wonderful thing to start the transition group for men as well.
Yes.
But the life transition could be something to do with a loss of a partner, or it might be retirement or moving to the area.
Yeah.
Or any other kind, a transition in your health, that also might be a common theme.
So, just a wonderful mix of supportive people. Kelly's right. Sometimes parents, they move to be near their child, and then they've given up their community, and starting over again can be very difficult. So that's another piece. When we started the group, we used to say things like, well, just bring resources or something that's going on in your community and share it. And again, libraries and park districts are wonderful for programs for people. And so that's one of the things that they've done, to share their experiences, where they might have been recently. Or sometimes we almost have a mini movie group. They're book clubs, and we are a mini movie club from time to time. So we're a variety of things, I think. So,
Courtney, I noticed someone's asked for phone numbers. Do you want to move to the PowerPoint? Because we've got the phone numbers on that.
Absolutely. And would the number just be the main number for the DuPage location?
We've got that
Or-
number on there, and that's always
Okay.
a good number to call. But we've also got the direct numbers for Kathleen and I on these PowerPoint slides.
Excellent. I'll go ahead and share that now. Okay. All right.
Can you move to the next one? Okay, so this has got the main number for if you were just calling intake to get on our individual counseling wait list, but also then the life transition group is the phone number there, 630-784-4876. And you can see that there's a group that is the second and fourth Wednesday at 10, and then there's another group that's first and third Tuesdays at 1. Okay, I'll have you move to the next slide. And again, the individual case management and counseling number, you can always call the 784-4802 number and ask about any of the groups. But if you want to talk to me or Kathleen directly, so the Family Caregiver Support Group has my phone number, which is 630-784-4839. And right now we have one meeting that is in the evening on Monday evening. And then there's a daytime caregiver group that's meeting on second and fourth Thursdays at 10 a.m. And I guess go ahead and move to the next slide. And then for grandparents raising grandchildren, I don't know why I did this, but this is another one of my phone numbers. So I have a work cell phone number. And this is 630-202-3920. So either number is perfectly good if you want to call me. And we have one meeting that's daytime, which is the second Tuesday from 1 to 2:30. And then every fourth Monday, we do an evening grandparent group at 6:30. And that's also a group that has like 20 years of history or more. And, some people had kids who were just little teeny kids and now are 19, 20 years old,
Right.
that, have experienced their whole time period being part of our group. So it has been very helpful, and there's been lots of discussion in grandparents raising grandchildren about school resources, mental health resources for kids, TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families. All kinds of issues have come up, but I think, as Barb mentioned, sometimes the most important thing is just having other people that are doing the same thing that you're doing, because your peers are not doing that. They're not taking care of little kids.
Okay. Is there another question in the chat, Courtney?
Take a look. Yes. So the question is, I'm not a caregiver, but I have a question. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder in 2014 and OCD in September of 2021 and have been receiving treatment at the DuPage County Health Department. I'm looking for some resources to choose another psychiatrist and therapist. Does Metropolitan Family Services offer these services for individuals like me, or are there other locations that accept Medicaid for my kind of treatment?
So we are an agency that has both individual therapy, and we have limited. Oh, hang on a second. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing now. Kathleen, can you take that one?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, we do. We have a psychiatrist on staff, and depending on your insurance, you could call that number, the 630-784-4801, and inquire. We do have counseling services. Kelly and I work in the senior program, which is anyone over 60 for counseling, but we obviously have our general counseling program. And so, depending, as I said, on what insurance you have, I would call and they would be able to tell you if that's a plan that we take. And then we do. If we do, then you would be put on a wait list. I have to be honest and say that in general counseling. Even seniors has a considerable wait list. General counseling even more so. I just not fair not to put that out there. And we do have on staff a psychiatrist. So I hope that answers your question. I think there's one more there, Courtney.
They just said thank you very much.
Okay. So no other questions?
I don't see any. If anyone has any, now is a great time. You can put your question in the chat or the Q&A.
Okay.
Let me also just kind of say something about what NAMI stands for, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and so it's NAMI DuPage. And NAMI DuPage has peer counseling, so people who are in recovery who might be able to do some counseling for people experiencing mental health symptoms. But they also have like a living room, which is an area to go hang out. They have various programs that happen for recreation, exercise, all kinds of things. So NAMI DuPage is another wonderful resource, and they run periodic like educational groups that are time limited for families, as well as, I think, more open-ended support groups as well. So that's another great resource if you're looking for group support or just information. They have a wonderful information and referral line as well.
Yeah. And they're located, for people that are on Manchester Road. They're on the same footprint as the county complex building on County Farm Road. So I would highly encourage people, as Kelly said, to visit. They have some wonderful programs.
And there's a question, what is the current wait time for senior counseling or general counseling, if you know that?
So it's a little bit hard to say, so, with the senior counseling, we are in the process of trying to hire new staff. And if we're able to hire quickly, then that would reduce our wait list. I have had people on the wait list for up to four months currently. In certain situations, we've expedited people from the wait list to the top based on severity or other issues. If it's a caregiving situation, we would probably try to get someone into the groups right away.
Yes.
As as well as if someone needed individual counseling, try to move them up the wait list. The general counseling wait list is longer, and they are also in the process of trying to expand services through hiring. So if you know of people who are in the mental health profession who are looking for work, it would be great to look at our website for that. But yes, it's kind of a national crisis right now in demand for mental health services, and there not being enough of it. And it's, I think, an especially difficult situation right now for children looking for mental health services. So it's definitely a big problem, a national problem.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, Courtney?
There's a question about if you know if the VNA Health Center in Carroll Stream offers mental health services.
I don't think I can answer that, Kelly. Do you?
I thought they did, but I don't know what the current situation is at the site. So I guess my first thought is that they do. I mean, DuPage County also offers mental health services, and probably there's other not-for-profits in the area as well. Some of them may be affiliated with some religious institutions.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking on their website right now, and I'm on their mental and behavioral health site, and it says Elgin, Bolingbrook, Romeoville, and then another Elgin site, as well as Aurora, offers those services. So definitely I would call the Carroll Stream location just to make sure, but looks like maybe not. We do have another question. Would the caregiver group be appropriate for someone to join if that person is traveling to help with care, but not the primary caregiver, looking for ideas to help from a distance and to encourage elderly parents with long-term illnesses to get help?
Absolutely. I had a caregiver. Her mother was on the East Coast, so she would only travel back and forth, and always felt she wasn't a real caregiver. And I assured her, because I was that kind of a caregiver. And often if there are children in a large family and they live in different parts of the country, we have someone now that's coming in from another area, because some of the siblings are here providing care. So absolutely, that would be appropriate. And with Zoom, it allows that. That's the beauty of Zoom.
Yes, I would also identify as a long distance caregiver myself. So I definitely would say it could be beneficial.
Yes.
I don't see any more questions in the Q&A or chat at this time.
All right. Well, I would just like to thank our panelists
Yeah.
on behalf of Kelly and myself, to Dorothy, Pat, Barb, and Barb. I can't thank you enough. You've just been outstanding in your participation, your answers, just your generosity and knowledge and support for Metropolitan and being here tonight and giving your time to us. I appreciate it. And to you, Courtney, for having us back at the Wheaton Library and having Metro and the opportunity to share what we do. We're very grateful. We thank you.
On behalf of the library, thank you so much to this wonderful panel for sharing your personal experiences and for taking the time. And there are thank yous in the Q&A and the chat for all of you being here with us tonight. Thank you so much, Kathleen and Kelly, for sharing your wisdom with us and your resources. We will definitely be sharing these resources in a follow-up email, as well as a recording of tonight's program in a few days. So thank you all so much, and definitely remember, seek out help, get help if you need it. There are resources available out there. So thank you all so much and have a wonderful night.